Good morning, everyone. Mr. Martinez here. Thought you'd enjoy an intro to the Protestant Reformation, which is what we're going to be learning about today. So without further ado, 3, 2, 1. And I am about to teach you, salute you back. Strength and honor. So your EQ for today is simply, what was the Protestant Reformation? What was the Protestant Reformation? So we began the Renaissance. We learned about how it began, how it started. In your books, it tells you where it began, Italy, perhaps. Another result of the Renaissance is the Protestant Reformation. So we're going to go through this today, and you will take your focus notes. And as you can see from this lesson, it's got some cool graphics. And as I said before, I like to find things that are creative and such and use them to help you learn the best. So, without further ado, Protestant Reformation. All right. So, causes of the Reformation. What were the causes? Number 1, the 100 Years' War and the Black Death or bubonic plague. People started to ask questions, question things that were occurring, and this led to ideas, which we're going to learn about. Scientific advances which went against what the Catholic Church believed and taught people. Now, I want to make this very clear. This is not an attack on the Catholic Church nor Catholics. This is simply stating that in a historical analysis, the church at that time was the Catholic Church, and the Reformation was an attempt to reform it, hence the term Reformation. Okay, the Catholic Church had many ideas that people began to question, and that is what we're referring to. So, and the corruption within the Catholic Church. And we're going to get into all this later on in the lesson. So here we go. These are causes of the Reformation. So your goal is to be able to articulate these causes when you're asked. Okay? So let's continue. All right. What was the Protestant Reformation? What happened? What occurred? What was going on? All right. Well, prior to the Reformation, all Christians were Roman Catholic. In fact, from the founding of Christianity up until 1500, if you called yourself a Christian, you were Catholic. Catholic means universal. And as we learned from studying the Roman Empire, at a point, the church became the official religion of the Roman Empire, hence Roman Catholic Church. So now we're going to understand why these names are what they are. Sorry, glasses keep sliding down. All right. So the Reformation was an attempt to reform the Catholic Church. Simple. It's an attempt to reform it, make it better, not get rid of it, not destroy it, but to make it what Christianity had begun as. Okay? So people like Martin Luther wanted to get rid of the corruption and restore the people's faith in the church. So we're going to learn about Martin Luther. We're going to learn who he was and what he did and why he did it and all that stuff today. So this lesson will be probably longer than the other ones. We'll try to do it in one shot, but we will see. Okay? So, In the end, the reformers like Luther established their own denominations, groups of Christianity. So they tried to reform. The church was resistant. Now you have a break. Okay? The Reformation caused a split in Christianity with the formation of these new Protestant faiths. And the word Protestant, this word comes about because people protested what the church was doing. We'll get into that. Okay? So, beginning of the school year, we talked about Christianity, we talked about other religions, and I said, if you call yourself a Christian, there are different ways of practicing that. And now we get to that. There's the Catholic tradition, and as a result of the Reformation, you have the Protestant methodology for practicing Christianity. So you have Christianity, Catholic, and Protestant now, all considered Christianity. Okay? So if you call yourself a Christian, you can practice in the Catholic tradition or the Protestant tradition. Okay? But they were all under Christianity. Okay? Let's continue. Got the little church there. So, all right. Don't know why these lines are there. We'll find out in a moment. The Reformers. Martin Luther. John Calvin. And Henry VIII. And I wish I was in my classroom because I would be showing you the picture of Henry VIII again. But we're not, so I won't. So these are considered the big reformers: Martin Luther, John Calvin, and Henry VIII. I know why those squiggly. Years ago, a student got a hold of my lesson and put wiggly lines in there, and I haven't removed them, so you just have to deal. All right, Martin Luther. Who is this guy? He lived from 1483 to 1546 in Germany. He was a German. Okay. Father encouraged him to study law. A sudden religious experience inspired him to become a monk, and I'm going to get into that in a moment, but let me first say that Martin Luther, he is the person that Martin Luther King Jr. takes his name from. Okay? Notice the date, 1483 to 1546. He came first. Okay? And obviously Martin Luther King Jr., his father was named Martin Luther, so he got his name from this gentleman. Okay? All right. I know this lesson has sound effects too, so. So he became troubled over the possibility of not going to heaven. And why did he feel this way? Well, according to what has been written, he was in love with a woman. And the problem was he was a monk. And as we learned, he had taken a vow of celibacy, so he couldn't act upon those feelings. But he was torn. He really loved her. And so he became troubled, like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And of course, the woman he loved was a nun, also taking vows of celibacy. So he began to freak out, like, what am I going to do? He turned to the Bible and confession for comfort. So he becomes a monk, has a great religious experience. I forgot to tell you what happened, so I'll share it now. He was walking home in a thunderstorm. His father wanted him to become a lawyer. And all of a sudden, big storm comes, and he's scared because, remember walking back in those days, there was no paved roads necessarily like we have today. Water gets on the ground, lightning hits the water, boom, you could die. So he prays, Lord, if you save me, I would devote my life to you. Well, obviously, he lived. So he becomes a monk. And as a result of this, studies the Bible, because they were the only people who could study it, were those in the monasteries. And then he comes up to this dilemma. what do I do? I love this woman, but I want to serve God. And he comes to a realization that he can do both. In the Bible, he found the answer he was looking for. Okay? And what did he discover? What was the great idea or truth that he discovered? Romans 1:17. It's a Bible verse for those of you that may not be familiar. Okay? And remember, we're learning this in the context of history. This is not an effort to convert someone or say this is the way. This is simply historical analysis of the subject matter. So what did he discover? For in the gospel, the righteousness of God is revealed, a righteousness that is by faith from first to last, just as it is written, the righteous will live by faith. So what did he discover? He does not have to do anything to be right with God. He is by faith. For it is by grace you have been saved through faith. This is what historic Christianity has taught, that you can do nothing for your salvation. It's only by the grace of God. All you have to do is call out to God, believe in your heart by faith, and you will be saved. And Martin Luther discovered this. So now he realizes, I can follow God by grace through faith, marry the woman I love, and everything will still be okay. There's no conflict anymore in his heart. Okay? Luther realized that only faith in Jesus, not deeds, could save a person. No good works, rituals, could save a person if they did not believe in Christ. Okay? Nothing. Only by faith. And this new freedom, he felt free. Okay? So, with this newfound freedom, he's looking at the church and he realizes, I want everyone else to realize this. So he writes his 95 thesis, or 95 reasons why the church needs to change, why, what things are wrong with it. And I think I might upload the 95 thesis for you to go over and look at. And then you can decide for yourself, is justification or not. Okay? So, list of wrong things he thought were wrong with the Catholic Church. Originally it was 120, but it didn't really go anywhere, so he compacted it to 95, and voila. He criticized the power of the Pope, the extreme wealth of the church, and indulgences, the Catholic idea of salvation. So, in an effort to build some monumental things, the Pope basically said, if you give money to the church, you will be guaranteed a place in heaven. Now, many years ago, I was at a friend's house and walking through the hall, going to the restroom, and I look on the wall, and an official document, some kind of big framed picture, it said, you are hereby granted salvation by order of the Pope, and guaranteed a place in heaven. It was one of these indulgences. This person had one. I'd never seen one. Read about them, studied them in school, never seen one in person. So it is something that Luther felt was not consistent with what he had just learned, which is it's by grace through faith, not works, or purchasing it with money given to the church. So that was his complaint. At this time, Gutenberg's printing press made it possible for Luther to spread his beliefs. We learned earlier that the printing press was invented in China many years before. Now Europe has this great bit of technology, and one of the first things printed on it was the Bible. It's like Gutenberg Bibles are so valuable. Okay? Posted his 95 thesis on a church in Germany. The city was called Worms. It looks like worms, but it's Worms. Gained support from people and criticism from the church, because the church The leadership did not want change. People wanted change, but the leadership did not. And as I shared with you before, oftentimes in history there are themes that repeat themselves. This is another one where leadership is one way, people feel want something different, there's change. And this is going to lead directly to the founding of the United States of America, among other democracies and republics throughout Europe and the world. Okay? Now, it's a lot to digest, but if you remember me in class, always giving you my best and a lot of information so you can learn. All right. So here's a page from a Gutenberg Bible. Now, I was fortunate enough to see, not a Gutenberg, but a later printing. I think it was 1615. And a person came into the store I was working at and actually had the Bible, but it had been burned in many pages, so they were selling pages from it. $100 a page. You figure they can't sell it as a complete work, so and people were buying them. But I got to see something similar to this in person. Also, at the Getty Museum, they had a display of the ancient manuscripts, and you could actually see some of these old versions that were really stylized. Okay, you know, what's this right here? What's going on here? I always wonder about these things when you study ancient literature. You see a lot of these little symbols and things and people, elves. You know. There's even one that looks like Yoda. So, looks like Yoda, he does. All right. This is a picture of a page from one of Gutenberg's Bibles. Now, many years ago, a church in England was doing a remodel, okay? And they were redoing their sanctuary, and they were digging up the floorboards, and they found a box. And in the box was an old Bible. And they knew it was old because it just looked like, wow, this is not like updated versions. So they took it to a person to authenticate, like, what is this? And it turned out to be a Gutenberg Bible. So they decided to auction it, use the money to fix the church. It sold, I think, in excess of $5 million. You can look it up on the internet and find out for sure, but I think it was 5 because it was so rare. One of the first printings of Gutenberg's Bible. Amazing. Okay? So, acceptance of reforms, what happened? Did things change? Did they get better? Little animations. I take no credit for the creation of all that. Like I said, I find things and change things and make it useful for us. Some local German churches accepted Luther's ideas. Creation of the Lutheran Church. If you're a Lutheran, this is where it came from. Supported by German princes who issued a formal protest against the church for suppressing the reforms. Reformers came to be known as, drumroll please, Protestants. Okay? So, right away, within Protestantism, there was a split into something known as Calvinism. That began in Switzerland with a guy named John Calvin. Okay? So, these are the movements in Protestantism that were first began at the Reformation. In England, they were called Puritans. In Scotland, they're called the Presbyterians. Got to do the accent. Well, in Holland, the Dutch Reformed. Can't do a Holland accent. Oh, and in France, they were called the Huguenots. Or the Huguenots. Okay? And Germany, Reformed Church. So these are the Calvinist groups that began in Protestantism. Okay? And the silly animation going by. There we go. All right. So now Christianity has Catholic tradition, Protestant tradition. Oh, another split. Lutheran and Calvinism. Calvinism has the Puritans, Huguenots, Presbyterians. Okay? So And this is pretty much how Christianity is today. You might have today another little offshoot, which would be what they call non-denominationalism, which is basically people who follow Christianity, but they don't belong to any big tradition necessarily. And when I worked at this bookstore, there was a book on all the different Protestant denominations. And it was like that thick. It's huge. At that time, I'm sure there's probably more today. But notice in the Catholic Church, there's only being Catholic. Catholicism has done a very good job keeping itself unified. Within the Catholic Church, there are orders. Okay, the Benedictine order, the Jesuit order, and so on. Franciscan order. These are all different ways of practicing Catholicism, but they're still under the umbrella of the Catholic Church. Whereas in Protestantism, anytime someone had a different idea or a way of doing it, they just broke away. Lutherans, Calvinists, Wesleyans, Methodists, it just goes on. Okay? That's what happened historically. All right, conclusion. All right, so I told you guys to get through this. 1,500 years, Christianity is more than being a Catholic. Okay? There are many ways of practicing that belief system. Protestants quickly become a large group, and today they are the largest, a big group within Christianity. I think slightly bigger than Catholicism, but they always put them together when they do the numbers. So, the split between the Protestant and Catholic would be the dividing factor in Europe and the world. And let me say this, as we go forward, most of the disagreements and issues were basically Protestant versus Catholic. And obviously, should that have been the case? Most likely no, but it was, especially in England, which we'll get to that. It would influence the age of exploration and lead to the world we have today. This idea, these things motivated people to want to explore, to spread their ideas. Puritans, you've heard of the Pilgrims, those were the Puritans. They came to America to practice their beliefs without the interference of the government intruding in their lives. And we're going to get into all this a little bit later. But all that was a result of the Protestant Reformation. So, your job, should you wish to do it, and you should be doing it, is to take focus notes, go through this lesson. Obviously, you can pause it, look at it at your own pace. Hope you enjoyed this lesson. I've always enjoyed this because it answers a lot of questions that I get at the beginning of the school year when we start talking about different beliefs and things as we begin the school year. So, Mr. Martinez, signing off. You guys take care and know that we're all in this together. Have a wonderful day, a wonderful week. Check your emails, reply. And those of you who aren't doing your work, you know who you are. And we know who you are. So please start doing your work for your own sake. Okay? I know this seems like a big vacation, but you should be doing work. So you guys take care of yourselves. Strength and honor. Martina's out.